Welcome to Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang, your intel on the Philippine markets and the economy. In the headlines.
The U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime.
After the United States attack on Iran, the Iranian parliament votes to close a vital oil supply route. The local fuel price hiked from Tuesday to exceed 5 pesos per liter. What will higher pump prices mean for inflation? Angelo Taninco of Security Bank joins us for his analysis. Maynilad has pushed back its planned initial public offering to give way to strong interest from potential cornerstone investors. And how to tell if this is fake or real.
Lahat po ng mapapanood ninyo sa susunod na mga eksena ay fake.
The proliferation of AI-generated videos raised the need for increased vigilance. The world waits with bated breath on how the conflict between Israel and Iran will play out from here on after the U.S. attacked 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. Satellite images show the damage incurred by nuclear sites in Isfahan, Natanz, and Fordow from Saturday's airstrikes. Carried out by B-2 stealth bombers, dropping 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs. The Pentagon said while the 3 uranium enrichment centers sustained severe damage, a final assessment would take time. U.S. President Donald Trump pushed through with attacking Iran despite giving himself 2 weeks to make a decision.
Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left, but if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes.
Vice President J.D. Vance and other officials insist that the U.S. is not at war with Iran and does not advocate for regime change. But Trump himself raised the prospect of regime change in a post on Sunday night, saying, if Iranian leaders are unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said Iran is reserving all options to defend its security, adding Tehran could not return to diplomacy while under attack by the U.S. and Israel. He is headed to Russia this Monday for urgent talks with President Vladimir Putin, a key ally.
Well, I think it is irrelevant to ask Iran to return to diplomacy because we were in the middle of diplomacy. We were in the middle of talks with the United States when Israelis blew it up. And again, we were in the middle of talks and negotiation with Europeans, happened only 2 days ago in Geneva, when this time Americans decided to blow it up. So we were in diplomacy, but we were attacked.
At the United Nations Security Council meeting, Russia, China, and Pakistan opposed adopting a resolution calling for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire in the Middle East. Meanwhile, here at home, the Department of Foreign Affairs called on all concerned parties to take the path of diplomacy. It added that Philippine embassies are prepared to assist Filipinos living in Israel and Iran. The Iranian parliament has voted to close the Strait of Hormuz, which could send global oil prices skyrocketing. Closing the strait needs final approval from the Supreme National Security Council, according to Iran's press TV. Nearly a quarter of oil shipments pass through the narrow waters that Iran shares with Oman and the UAE. The U.S. State Department called on China to dissuade Iran from closing the strait to avoid oil supply disruptions. RCBC chief economist Mike Ricafort told this program that a spike in crude prices would lead to faster inflation.
The risk in the Middle East now is escalation of the Israel-Iran war, especially if U.S. would be involved, and also the risk of potential supply chain disruption, especially at the Strait of Hormuz. It's still uncertain, and because the impact there is on inflation. Because the rule of thumb, for every $10 increase in the world price of oil, inflation could pick up at least 0.2 to 0.3 percentage point. Well, it's already up by more than $10 at $75, coming from $63, $64. But the risk there, should there be an escalation, the story could be different.
Analysts expect oil prices to rise this week by $3 to $5 a barrel as the Mid-East conflict escalates. Brent crude is sitting in at $77 a barrel, up 2.5%. West Texas Intermediate settling at $75 a barrel, up 2.7%. Dubai crude rose by 0.5% last Friday at $71 a barrel. The Energy Department Friday warned of a major hike in pump prices based on 4 days of trading. Gasoline prices expected to increase tomorrow, Tuesday, between 250 and 3 pesos per liter. Diesel between 430 and 480 pesos, and kerosene between 425 and 440 pesos. Economists are split on the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas' next move as global and local risks cloud the outlook for interest rates for the rest of 2025. BPI lead economist June Neri says while a rate cut is still on the table, tensions in the Middle East and their impact on oil prices have made monetary easing more difficult. He warns that if the conflict drags on, it could force the BSP to hold back on further easing. Meanwhile, ANZ Research predicts 2 more rate cuts by the end of this year. CTI Research projects 3 more cuts through early 2026, but said risks from oil price volatility and global uncertainty could delay those moves. And that concern is not just coming from the outside. BSP Governor Eli Remolona himself echoed these warnings last Friday on this program.
We have a bad scenario, if I may call it that, in which our inflation rate could exceed 5%. But we hope that doesn't happen, and we're carefully watching that. Probably means Dubai crude goes up to 100, and then the peso depreciates sharply. And those two combined would have a very big effect on our inflation.
With us now for more is Angelo Taninco, Research Head and Chief Economist at the Security Bank. Good to see you again, Jello. Welcome back to the program.
Good morning, Cathy. Thank you for having me.
So how bad could this Middle East escalation be for local inflation as pump prices head higher?
Indeed, the Middle East poses upside risk to the inflation outlook. Last, we saw the central bank cutting the policy rate for a second time this year, and with the inflation outlook revised downward to below 2%. Our in-house view is a notch below the 2% minimum target of government. But this assumes that the global oil price would settle closer to $70 per barrel. So with the conflict escalating, given the directly involved now over the weekend, we think that the stronger upside risk already looms in terms of the inflation over the near term.
Would you be looking at the Dubai or the Brent crude prices for your next inflation estimates, Jello?
We're looking at both the Brent and the Dubai oil price, and in our assumption, we think that the Brent oil price would top $80 per barrel over the near term in response to this conflict over the weekend. And we are not yet in a worst case scenario because I think the market is still not yet fully convinced that this could escalate into a broader conflict, as Iran and Israel are still the two main players. So basically, locally contained in terms of the geopolitical risk within the Middle East. So, but of course, if this worsens further, in a worst case scenario of above $100 per barrel, then we could see the Philippine inflation moving faster towards the upper bound of the target range of 4%. And of course, that would result in a more risk-off sentiment in terms of the market's performance.
Yeah, but what we do know, Jello, is that prices at the pump is likely to exceed 5 pesos per liter from tomorrow, Tuesday. So would you be considering to revise your current inflation estimates of 1.9%?
At least for this second quarter, for the month of June, we have an estimate that is, of course, higher than the 1.3% last, closer at 2% for this month because, as mentioned, of the rising local pump prices. But still, rice inflation is likely to remain in negative territory. Rice prices are now much lower compared to the same month a year ago. And therefore, that can help temper the inflationary pressures that will come from the rising pump prices.
So we have pump prices on the one hand and rice prices on the other. How might these impact the pace then, or even the idea of the BSP of carrying on with the rate cutting if inflation were to head closer to 5% from where it is now at 1.6%?
So looking at the second half of the year, we believe that rice price will continue to be lower internationally compared to the second half of last year. We have a negative rice inflation. Regards oil inflation will be more positive for the second half to the same period last year. And therefore, that will be the push factor in terms of inflation, whereas the factor would be on the right, and hence the overall impact coming from these oil spikes would likely to be more tempered as opposed to historic events such as 2022 when we had the Russia-Ukraine war and we saw oil prices jumping by more than $100 per barrel, with Philippine inflation also reaching our target.
So we've heard from the governor himself saying he's going to be watching oil prices, and the other is the peso. It's going to be a problem if the peso falls. Where do you see the peso headed next in the second half then? And in what way can the prolonged higher crude prices influence the dollar, and by way of that, the peso?
Well, it's also somewhat similar to the tug of war between oil and rice. Because at the start of the year, particularly since April, we saw a structural change on the US dollar itself. The dollar weakened substantially since April because of the tariffs. Now we are seeing knee-jerk reaction of some uptick on the US dollar. On the dollar peso, also, we are seeing some uptick knee-jerk reaction. But we still do not think that there is a sharp peso depreciation pressure. Partly because you still have overall a weak US dollar sentiment. And therefore, we think that the dollar peso will move higher more modestly. And then at the fourth quarter, will again follow its historical trend of moving downward in light of stronger holiday-related inflows such as remittances.
All right, so many moving parts there, but thank you for the insights and putting this all together. Jello Taninco of Security Bank joining us. You're watching Money Talks, coming right up. Manila delays its IPO listing, and we talk about the proliferation of AI videos. Keep it here on One News.
Lahat po ng mapapanood ninyo sa susunod na mga eksena ay fake. Tandaan niyo po yan.
Ngayon, sobrang dali na gumawa ng fake na video. Muka, boses, pwedeng gayahin. Parang totoo, pero hindi.
Yung fake videos, pwedeng gamitin yan para manghingi ng OTP, password, o mag-spread ng maling impormasyon. Gaya nito.
Bro, legit to. High return in just 3 months. Wala kang gagawin.
Oo, boss, bayad ka. Minimum lang 50,000, may 100,000 ka na bukas.
Oops, fake lahat to. Pati kami FAK.
Nanalo ako. Pero kailangan daw ng 1,000 pesos. Tsaka OTP. Anong OTP?
Inday, na-aksidente si sir. Nasa ospital. Karon dayon nagpadala og kwarta.
Unsa? Ay, fake pala ako. Pati itong buong eksena.
Good morning po. May promo tayo ngayon. Tataasan natin ang credit limit ninyo.
Alright.
Pakisend po ng picture ng credit card nyo.
Oops, fake to.
Ingat tayong lahat sa fake.
Welcome back to Money Talks. Trading on Wall Street was choppy last Friday amid the Israel-Iran conflict, leaving U.S. markets a mixed bag. The Dow rose by less than 0.1%, S&P 500 down by 0.2%, and the Nasdaq fell by over 0.5%. Benchmark 10-year Treasury yields held steady, settling at 4.374%. Gold prices slightly declined to $3,368 per troy ounce. U.S. futures point to a decline when the markets open later tonight Manila time as the U.S. enters Israel's conflict against Iran. The Dow and the S&P are both down by 0.4%, and the Nasdaq falls by over 0.5%. As for Asian markets, they are down in the first hours of trading. The Australian ASX 200 down 0.7%. South Korea's Kospi falling by nearly 1%. And Japan's Nikkei 225 declines by nearly 0.4%. As the Israel-Iran conflict rages on, let's take a look at how our own markets are being affected. The Philippine Stock Exchange Index opens this Monday lower by over 0.6%, 6,300. PSCI tumbled last Friday by 0.2%, and the broader all-shares index declined by nearly 0.5%. Most sectoral gauges finished in negative territory, with the property index leading losses. Meanwhile, the Philippine peso opens today weaker at 57.42 to the dollar. The peso closed Friday stronger at 57.22 against the greenback. In corporate news, Maynilad has pushed back its planned initial public offering to give way to strong interest from potential cornerstone investors. Maynilad says the investors requested more time to finalize internal approvals, prompting it to submit a revised timeline to the SEC and the PSE. Originally scheduled to take place this July, the listing is now set no later than October 2025 under the ticker symbol MYNLD. The offering still awaits regulatory green lights, including the SEC's order of registration and permit to sell securities. Meanwhile, Maynilad also secured a 10-year extension of its concession deal. The Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System got the go-ahead from the Economic and Development Council on June 18th, pushing the concession's validity until January 2047. Quick note, Maynilad and Signal, the owner of this channel, are part of the MVP Group. A new AI-generated video from PLDT and Smart is generating buzz online, not just for its creativity, but for its urgent warning against the growing threat of AI-powered scams.
Lahat po ng mapapanood ninyo sa susunod na mga eksena ay fake. Tandaan niyo po yan.
Ngayon, sobrang dali na gumawa ng fake na video. Muka, boses, pwedeng gayahin.
Kaya let's be aware. Magtulungan tayo na maintindihan ng bawat isa ang mga nakikita at napapanood natin.
Uulitin ko lang ha, ang lahat ng nakita nyo, fake. Walang totoong tao dito. Pati ako fake. Okay, thanks, bye.
The campaign, which features deepfake characters and eerily realistic voices, highlights how easy it has become to create fake videos using artificial intelligence. In an interview on Morning Matters, Roby Alampay, first vice president and head of public engagement at PLDT and Smart, explained while the tools are new, the deception is not.
There's nothing new with the scams. There's nothing new with the concern about disinformation and fake news. But I think we all feel it, di ba? I mean, we're all consuming a lot of fake videos now, or at least AI-generated videos. And we're all now starting to see, how this can be used and how a lot of the people that we care about who might be more vulnerable than others in consuming this could, as you said, be vulnerable and be at risk. They're going to be using the same modus, same scams. Scams really play not on with technology but with human nature. And yun talaga yung vulnerability mo bilang tao. Madali ka magtiwala. And yun pa rin ang pinaka...
Gusto mo ng malaking kita.
Oh, yun pa rin. Oh, exactly. You want easy money. Yun pa rin ang biggest weakness.
Alampay urged the public to continue using AI to boost productivity, but with honesty and critical thinking.
I do believe that it increases my productivity. But my guideline for myself is on two levels. One is, I'll be transparent about it. So let's all be transparent about it. Magpakatotoo na tayong lahat. My kids use it, my
gumagamit
friends
tayo ng AI.
Yeah, gumagamit. And there's no shame. Ako personally,
Parang
if you
Google
use
na
it,
siya eh. Tama.
Well, there's a conversation about that. I wouldn't use it necessarily as
Google.
as Google.
Because you have to verify.
Yes, exactly. But that brings to my first point. So my second point. My first point is be transparent about it, and let's all use it. Because when we're transparent, then we can all share both the positive as well as the risks that we discover, as well as the limitations. So magturuan tayo. We teach each other. My second is kahit anong gawin mo sa AI, sa'yo yan. That's your accountability. And for me personally, I'd like to think that helps me to navigate the positive and then the negative.
Coming up, HIV clinics across the Philippines brace for shutdown as U.S. aid dries up. Keep it here on One News.
Lahat po ng mapapanood ninyo sa susunod na mga eksena ay fake. Tandaan niyo po yan.
Ngayon, sobrang dali na gumawa ng fake na video. Muka, boses, pwedeng gayahin. Parang totoo, pero hindi.
Yung fake videos, pwedeng gamitin yan para manghingi ng OTP, password, o mag-spread ng maling impormasyon. Gaya nito.
Bro, legit to. High return in just 3 months. Wala kang gagawin.
Oh, boss, bayad ka. Minimum lang 50,000, may 100,000 ka na bukas.
Oops, fake lahat to. Pati kami FAK.
Nanalo ako. Pero kailangan daw ng 1,000 pesos. Tsaka OTP. Anong OTP?
Inday, na-aksidente si sir. Nasa ospital. Karon dayon nagpadala og kwarta.
Unsa? Ay, fake pala ako. Pati itong buong eksena.
Good morning po. May promo tayo ngayon. Tataasan natin ang credit limit ninyo.
Alright.
Pakisend po ng picture ng credit card nyo.
Oops, fake to.
Ingat tayong lahat sa fake. Gaya namin.
Lahat kami dito fake.
Pakipadala ng email address at phone number. Oops, fake ako.
Sorry, tita. Fake ako.
Ow, I miss you.
Sorry. Fake kami.
Gagawa ko ng batas na lahat ng senior high school students kailangan mag-necktie.
Bakit po necktie, sir?
Sa ikauunlad ng bayan, neckties ang kailangan. Ay, fake pala ako, pati itong press con.
Fake news and fake videos will become an even bigger problem. Pati lahat ito fake.
Ang nakakagulat, sobrang dali na gumawa ng video gamit ang AI. Sobrang galing na nito at gagaling pa.
Ang good news, mukhang mas madaling gumawa ng AI-generated video kesa magpaloko, kahit gano'ng kagaling pa yan. Lalo na kaming mga kabataan ngayon, hindi na kami basta-basta maluloko.
Hindi mo kami maluloko, AI!
Gayunpaman, there are people we care about who can fall for this. At aminin,
You're watching Money Talks in One News. I'm Cathy Yang. As Pride Month unfolds in the Philippines, uncertainty looms for dozens of HIV clinics and community centers. Dr. Ronivin Pagtakhan, founder of Love Yourself, warns that recent U.S. political shifts, particularly funding rollbacks, are now hitting home. Here's an excerpt from my conversation with him on Thought Leaders.
As part of the protest and the advocacy of what we're doing, we have a very big setup when it comes to the USAID. USAID is starting, we had attended the meeting a few weeks back, and they're starting to fold. And the programs will end this coming September. We don't know yet what's going to happen next, but for sure, when the declaration happened in January, everything that has to do with USAID closed down. USAID is supporting at least minimum of 20 community centers in the Philippines, together with community-based organizations. Unfortunately, they are not LGUs who can absorb the capacity and the weight of the program, so they had to really close down.
So kasama na rin kayo doon?
We are affected. Fortunately, earlier, when Trump won, we already prepared because we kind of know the platform. So we transitioned everything that we do into a more sustainable angle. So Love Yourself is currently a self-sustaining facility. It has 22 self-sustaining facilities right now. So anything that has to do with the innovations that we're doing, those are the ones that are affected. But when it comes to the day-to-day activities, the clinics, the programs that we do, hindi naman po siya na-affect. Unfortunately, that's us. But the 10 community organizations that USAID is supporting, medyo affected po sila. Anything that has to do with trans, anything that has to do with MSM, LGBTQIA+, had to stop. So may isang clinic sa Quezon City na ang focus nila is trans health. They had to close down after opening ng 1 month. So that's how hard it was for the community na affected po nung program. Kasi Love Yourself is contributing 54% of all the reported cases in Metro Manila and maybe around 30-40 in the whole country. But we're just part of the solution. Ibig sabihin, there are other community-based organizations who need help, who are willing to help. Unfortunately, they do not have the same, platforms and seed funding that we're fortunate to have for them to continue the operations that they're doing. So when USAID started folding, and the program started to, put into a halt, edi lahat po sila nag-stop yung operations.
Especially yung isang clinic sa Quezon City,
Yes.
sabi mo nga na nagsara. Ano ngayon ang gagawin ninyo to help the other clinics that are still open and that you wish would keep open even after the September funding dries up?
Well, we're very fortunate because Global Fund, the international funding agency that supports HIV, malaria, and tuberculosis, is still here. So we are still supporting 50 community-based organizations all over the Philippines. So we have a total of 72 clinics right now that we're supporting, that's contributing to the prevention component of the HIV program.
Catch the full interview on Long Conversation, Thought Leaders, only here on One News. And the Energy Department on Friday has warned of a major hike in pump prices based on 4 days of trading. Let's take a look at the gas prices. They're expected to increase tomorrow, Tuesday, between 250 and 3 pesos per liter. Diesel between 430 and 480 pesos. And kerosene between 425 and 440 pesos. And we're looking at how Brent crude is now moving. It's up 2% as we speak at $78.81 a barrel. And West Texas Intermediate is up $75.43 a barrel, up 2%. That is it for Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Catch us again tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. here on One News. We're also streamed live on YouTube and on our Facebook channels. Have a great day ahead.